Well, let's now get in a very special guest, Elbridge Colby, former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Strategy and Force Development. Elbridge is one of those people who's been arguing that why is there even this expectation that India should be some sort of a formal ally of the United States? It's better if India is a partner, because then India can also pull its own weight, and India wants to pull its own weight. India wants to be a great power by itself, and it wants to do its share, and the United States, far from objecting to that, should actually embrace it. Elbridge Colby now joining us. Elbridge, I know you've been talking about this and you've been writing about it for a while, that don't expect India to be a formal ally, and the United States should not want India to be a formal ally. It's almost better if the two are working as strategic partners, and as equal partners of some sort. And that's what India wants to be in any case.
I think that's exactly right. I mean, the piece was in the Economic Times earlier this week. But I mean, look, America, frankly, has many more responsibilities than it can handle. I mean, this is an objective fact as expressed in multiple defense strategies. And many of our allies do not pull their weight at all. I mean, for instance, NATO is supposed to spend 2% of GDP on defense. Each country is, and the majority do not do so. And of course, we also have problems in East Asia. And this is not to say that we should abandon our allies, but it's to say India, to me, is kind of the model of what we want. You know, if you were going to use an old-fashioned use of the term ally, I think we already are allies. You could say small a. We have aligned interests, and we're trying to work together as much as possible, but not this sort of formalized version that's emerged for the United States since the end of the Second World War. And I mean, it's very clear that India, of course, is immensely powerful, growing, but is also self-reliant and independent and wants to be. And I think that's exactly the kind of approach that we want. And I think the approach of the Modi government, of Minister Jaishankar, of looking for areas of alignment based on shared interests, that's nothing to, in fact, that's preferable because many of the countries that purportedly at least say they share our values, I'm not always so sure, at least in my own case, or for some of us in the United States, they don't really do much. So it's largely rhetorical, and we're way beyond the point where we can afford to have more of those.
So, Elbridge, if I can understand the thesis that you are putting forward, and that seems to be what the United States has more or less accepted right now, is that, look, India is rising as a global power. We should assist that, help that, celebrate that, encourage that as much as we possibly can, because an India that is self-reliant and self-sufficient and able to look after its own interests in this part of the world, that actually contributes back to American security more than if India was just some sort of a treaty partner and agreeing to say, yes, we agree with everything that you're doing, but essentially not contributing in its own way, not pulling its own weight. So an independent, strong India is actually probably better for the United States, because in most of the cases, it will in any case end up doing the things that the United States would have liked to be seeing done in this part of the world.
Yes, and not do it because of trying to please us or trying to curry favor with us or anything like that, but doing it for your own reasons. And the confident nationalism that I think Prime Minister Modi expressed in his speech to the Congress this week showed that 75 years since independence, you know, as he said, 1,000 years of foreign rule, and now a stout and confident Indian nation, which is now the largest in the world. I mean, if you compare that, I mean, and I say this to them directly, the Germans, for instance, rhetorically, they're with us a lot, but they have not even really moved on their so-called Zeitenwende. And, you know, most of the things that are being done in Eastern Europe are being done by the United States or by Poland, which has a comparable kind of perspective to India, which I think is most welcome. Meantime, the Indians are, you know, incredibly formidable and well-respected military and actually clashing directly with the PLA, not because you want to do it for the Americans, but because you're jealously guarding your national territory. And I think that's exactly the kind of approach we want. And I would take that every day of the week and twice on Sunday over a country that may vote with us in these multilateral institutions or signs on to these pledges, but doesn't follow through. And that's a real problem that we, the Americans, face. I'd much rather have India, the kind of model that India provides.
Raj, you got the chance to meet Prime Minister Modi. I expect you said all of this to him. Or what did he say to you?
Well, I mean, let me just say it was an exceptional honor to be able to meet with Prime Minister Modi, of course, the leader of the world's largest country, one of its greatest nations, and democratically elected and so forth. So that was really an inspiration to be able to meet with him. I made the point that I regularly make. I touched on in my Economic Times piece that I've made in the Hindustan Times earlier in the year, that we share a real danger from China, and that the military challenge is perhaps more acute in this decade or early into the next at least some appreciate. And I think, this is something that he and his team are clearly well aware of. And I think some of the do-outs that came out of this visit show that they appreciate the problem. So this was not a surprise to the prime minister, but, he gave off the impression of confidence about the relationship, about India's growing place in the world and its ability to stand up to China. But my view is always, more, we can do more, and we in the United States need to do more and do so more quickly was my main message.
Elbridge Colby, thank you so much for joining us with that perspective. Great talking to you. Great talking to you.